All right, so I think first, get this one lined up. See if we can't get that. There we go. Yeah. This aligns once I put the nose piece on. Nose piece bolts here, and then these align with the nose piece, and you bolt those on. And so that's what causes this to go where it's going to go. All right. That's pretty close. Yeah, I think I got it. Barely getting them snug. And then going to the next bolt. And I have put anti-seize in all of these, which is just typical for me. I use anti-seize a lot just because I don't like stuck bolts. Okay, just a little snug, let out. So all I'm doing is putting the pipe in right there. I'll give you a little view of both sides. That feels pretty good. So let's see. Rather than hit this, let me grab a board. Just allow me to seat that thing up a little bit. So if you remember, I shortened this pipe by about 4 or 5 inches. So normally this air breather would be up here, and so mine's going to be quite a bit lower than your typical air breather. And if you recall, the reason I did that is because my steering wheel is about that height, and I wanted to keep everything, you know, approximately about the height of my steering wheel. My exhaust pipe is not going to come up and around and go up. If you've been watching the 550 series, you know that I don't plan on doing that. I plan on taking a little stainless steel pipe and coming off here, probably putting a little bevel on it so that it aims down, and that's going to be where my pipe. I don't, you know, my muffler's already here. The pipe is just an extension to extend it above, you know, and get the pipe up here. But in my case, because I'm going to be using the tractor in the woods a lot, I don't want that pipe sitting above the hood and just hitting branches, because that's all it would do. And I do plan on using this in the woods some. So that'll actually help me. I'm going to pull that off for now. I'm not ready to put that on. I did go ahead and put the bolt through there, bolt and nut. Just clamp that, or tighten that clamp down. So now, you know, it needs its bolts here. And I'll probably go ahead and do that because I don't see any need to, you know, delay that any. This here I'm delaying because of the electrical. I want to be able to remove this and get access to all of that. And then same with the battery box. I haven't fully bolted that down. I put a few bolts in right here. That's just to keep it from moving around. A couple things, or at least one thing I want you guys to notice, those little rubber bumpers that we use. You see how they apply now when you put this piece of tin in here. They sit against that, so it keeps that from vibrating. If you didn't do that, I suspect there'd be a lot of rattling of the tractor. And so I'll put these bolts in, 3 on the other side as well. I should be able to then take these 2 or these 4 bolts out and these 2 right here out and pull this upper section out so that I can then complete my wiring. So I can actually put my steering wheel and stuff on if I wanted right now. I'm not going to. I'm going to hold off in case I got to pull that out. I need to clean up my little gear shifter plate. And then, of course, I'll have to wire my switch, get my choke cable in there, as well as my light switch on the other side. So, moving along. Looks pretty awesome with the nose on now. Man, it just shows you how kind of bulldogish looking these tractors are. They just look so tough and rugged, you know. I'm pretty excited about today because we're going to get started on the wiring harness today. And that's exciting and also scary at the same time. So I've got the dash console here, and I've got brand new gauges. I've got a brand new wiring harness. Now, if you have followed me along the entire time, you may have heard previously that my plan was to build a new wiring harness, and that was my original plan. But the time and effort involved, I've done it before, and it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time. I have to buy quite a bit of wiring because I just don't have much in stock. I have to buy wiring, I have to buy a lot of different fittings and this kind of thing. So I could have done it, but it would have taken quite a bit of time and effort and some money. And so at the end of the day, I ended up ordering something called a Brillman wiring harness, B-R-I-L-L-M-A-N. I want to say out of Virginia, but don't quote me on that. They make lots of wiring harnesses for lots of different applications. They seem to have a very good following. A lot of people recommend them. It is supposed to be as original, this wiring harness. So I'm pretty excited about doing it. All the wires look to be labeled, and it's got instructions. So it should just be a matter of running down, finding the wire and its corresponding location and attaching it to that location. So it's going to be difficult for me to record up in the dash for you, but I'll do my very best. But keep in mind, if you do order a wiring harness, yours should come with instructions as well. And so this is more just for entertainment value. I want to mention a few things that I've done off camera. I went ahead and put the bolts in this and that, and then that centered this up real nice. My power steering pump coming through there, it was rubbing a little bit on the edge, so it's not doing that anymore. And then also I put in my clutch safety switch. It's just a small little switch that gets bolted under there, one little screw and screws up in there. It was very difficult for me to record that up underneath the dash, and I may have a lot of the same issues today. So I do have a mini alternator, as I've mentioned before, and I've got a little adapter for that. This wiring harness that I purchased is for an Oliver 550 with a 10SI alternator. So I will have to clip those wires for the 10SI alternator, and I will have to solder and use some shrink wrap for these, just so that it maintains that professional look. And so just keep that in mind. They do sell the generator wiring harnesses. I chose to eliminate my generator. I like the idea of going with just a mini alternator and eliminating the generator as well as the voltage regulator. So let's get started. So if you want to take a second to look at that information. The way this wire would normally run would be through this wire loom. My plan is to get it all kind of roughly in place. And once it's roughly in place, then I can, do the little tweaks here and there and, get it clipped up and pinned up and attached and all that jazz. So right now, we want to get it in its approximate home. And here, I believe I can go ahead and route that underneath my plate here. So if you recall, that's something that I have put off permanently bolting down simply because I knew I needed to be able to access that. I did throw a couple bolts in just to hold her steady. I found myself knocking it around all over the place. I'm trying to do this on this side of the tractor so you can see on your side. So, all right. All right. So there was a little bit of a drop. All right, so it stayed predominantly where it needed to be. So now, as you can see, way more access. I can get my arm in there if I need to, so that's what we need. Well, guys, I don't know how much there is to learn, as if I just do this in regular time, it's going to be slow and tedious, and you're not always going to know what I'm doing. So I think I'll put you in time lapse, and just know that the wires are are marked, and then you've got a corresponding piece of paper. So for instance, this says ignition switch B in quotes to starter solenoid. So it's the orange wire, it says orange, to B or battery, okay? And then the other end goes to my starter solenoid. That's all that means. So all I'm doing is going through this, taking my wires, putting them on. I do have some small washers that I'm utilizing. And I'm just snugging these up finger tight for right now, because I know there's going to be other wires that connect to this. So I'm just kind of trying to get them in a way that you know, I can get some of them connected. And then once I'm all done, I'll have to kind of figure out how to arrange my wires in here. And so it might be easier said than done. I don't know. We're going to find out. So I'm going to put you on time lapse. So 18 is supposed to connect to 16. That's your dash wiring lights. So look here. I mean, the connection is deep. So the original looks like this. So you see the difference? This one's long and slender and actually allows it to get in there and make a connection. So you can actually make a connection with this one. This one here, you can't even get close. You can get that deep into it. This thing here gets 1/4 inch deeper. I mean, which is what it needs and requires for it to actually make a connection. Went ahead and soldered. So this is the clip that goes in the back of my mini alternator. I had to purchase this separate. So what I've done is I've soldered these two leads together and then soldered the two to the black wire coming off the Brillman, which is the ignition wire. And then the purple wire goes to my light. So if you look at the back of that, so then you look at this. So this lead or probe here is for ignition. The one here on the right, on this side, is for the light, and the one on top is the sensory battery voltage sensor. So I've tied the two, the ignition and the battery voltage sensor wires together. So it'll sense the electricity there. I know there are better ways to do that, but I'm not gonna disrupt the wiring harness. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna route them behind this, and I'm gonna tape this up so that all of this wire is kind of come together like this. So I'll let you see that right now. I apologize for not showing you guys all the soldering that I did, but it was a lot of effort. I'm not set up real good to do solder. When you're doing solder, it's nice to have something that holds your project while you have two hands free, one on the iron and one on the solder. And really even a fourth hand would be great, but very difficult for me to do that. Hydraulic hose there. And the two pieces that come together. You know, there was no way that was going to fit in there. And so I did have to obviously modify that to make that work. So perfect it's not, but it is pretty good. So that's how that snaps in. It's got a little clip here that just snaps in. I'll snug this here up. I've just finger tightened it. That's probably how I'll leave that, just like that. I like the idea of it being up against the engine. I'll roll these little deals on. There's little jobs on the other side as well that I've got to do. as far as rolling those little metal clips over the wiring just to kind of keep it up against the block and up against the frame of the truck. All right, guys, I think for the most part, I'm done with my wiring. You know, I'm gonna pull those tags off here in a minute, but just a couple things to note. If you're using one of these Brillman's harnesses, and nothing wrong with them, the harness itself is really pretty high quality. There's just a few things they left out. They didn't give me a jumper from my fuel sender to the sending unit on the fuel tank. So I'll, you know, I'll use this. This is the old one. But something of note, you know, if you've done something similar to what I've done, you know, you've painted all the surfaces, and this has to be grounded. So what I'm going to end up using is just a little piece of copper. This is just some flashing. It's pretty thick. And so I'm going to put a hole in both ends, and then I'm going to make it slide onto there and onto there. And then I went ahead and put some tape on that as well. All I did was I folded this wire over on itself because it was just way too long. Now I could have cut it and soldered it just like they did, but honestly, I didn't want to go to that effort, and I don't have very many of these fittings. I don't think I'd have the right size for those. I'd have to run in town, so I don't think it's necessary anyways. I'm also going to have, of course, the battery cable will come through there as well and attach. So I took a minute to just kind of clean this copper a little bit, and of course I drilled my holes, and then I rounded my edges on the 2x72 grinder. So I'll put it in just like that, only of course that terminal, this terminal here will, you know, the thing will go under. Now I am going to put, because I do have the extra bolt length here, I am going to use another nut, and I'll just cinch that up with a washer on it, and a wire, of course, will go from that, and that'll give us our ground. What I did is I took another piece of that copper plate, copper sheet metal, and I know it looks funny because I just cut it out. Basically, I cut a washer out, drilled it, and cut a little washer out. And then what I've done is I've soldered the end of this. And what I'm going to end up doing is where that bolt right there goes, I'm going to clean that area up just a bit. And this is going to go right at the base of that. Then it'll go straight up. And I'll show you the end result. I know that's kind of funny. I'm going to put a... I'll put some of the heat shrink over that just to protect it, but I wanted it soldered just for strength, vibration, that kind of thing. Okay, now we've got her cleaned up real nice. I'm just going to put a little dielectric grease on there. Only thing that's going to do is it'll just help prevent corrosion. Before I go too fast, I just want to make sure everybody understands what I did here. So again, just a little strip of copper right on there. You could use a jumper wire. It'd be no different. I just chose to use a little spade or a little copper plate like that. And then of course, it runs down to my ground, right down there. Yeah, you can't see it too well, but right there.